Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Tom Hamer, co-founder and CEO at Marqo. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to join you here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I originally started my career as a software engineer working for AWS. Before that, when I was 14, I actually started off making apps on the App Store, which was an amazing experience because, back in 20, people would pretty much download anything that you put onto the App Store. So I was able to put up these relatively low quality apps and get thousands of downloads a day. But so I started off doing that and then studied computer science, worked for AWS. I worked on RDS, which was the relational database service. So my interest is really since I started working, it's been in dev infrastructure, building for developers. And then after that, I started Marqo actually with my co-founder, who was also ex-Amazon.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, appreciate that background. So, yeah, let's talk about Marqo. Tell us a little bit about the products and services that Marqo offers.
Yeah, so Marqo provides an end-to-end vector search platform. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with vector databases. Is that something that
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, as a SaaS CFO, yeah, hear a lot of tech terminology, but yeah, for the finance folks tell us a little bit what is Vector?
So what vector databases provide is a new way to do search. And it's a way that you can use the latest AI models to actually power information retrieval. So if you want to search through data, you can kind of use this old school method, which is kind of keyword based. So you're looking for kind of keyword similarity in the data. If the data contains the word dog, let's say it's a document, it contains the word dog, and then you're searching for the word dog, then that document's going to come up. What vector search does is it instead breaks down the data into this semantic representation so if you search dog, but maybe the word dog is not in the document, but it's actually, contains some information about dogs, it will actually still match that information. So it's this new way of doing information retrieval. And the way that you generate these vectors is through using the latest kind of AI models. And then you can kind of store them in this vector database, and it makes for a much more effective mechanism for information retrieval than what we had in the past.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that helps. I appreciate the explanation. So is this a platform? Is this something that is offered, say, as a platform as a service? Tell how are your customers consuming the product?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Marqo open source. So we have an open source offering. Any developer can download that and use it commercially. It's Apache 2.0 licensed, so very permissive license. And we have thousands of developers around the world who use Marqo for a lot of different use cases. We've got everything from military or government use cases all the way to commercial use cases and also across different geographies. So pretty much every country you could imagine as well. So we've got this very permissive open source kind of component. And then we've also got our Marqo Cloud platform. And so the Marqo Cloud platform is the commercial kind of component of Marqo. And where the Marqo Cloud platform is really useful is if you want to run Marqo at scale. So Marqo Cloud will allow you to scale up and down seamlessly. And also it provides a lot of these enterprise features that you need. So for example, things like access control. So you can add your team, you can control that access, and you can do things like API keys, so security-based features, and also the model training as well. So you can actually train the models that generate embeddings, the AI models on the Marqo Cloud platform as well. So it handles that component.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, appreciate it. And is this something where in these use cases they're using, your product internally on their database, their data set? So is it just like organizations, using it just internally, not some like public facing like data project?
Yeah, so you can use Marqo for a lot of different things.
Okay.
We've got customers using Marqo for internal search, but where our go-to-market promotion is actually focused at the moment is with mid-market ecommerce. So, and that's a lot of external kind of experiences. So that's usually recommendations and search. You could imagine that you're building a search experience, and for like an e-commerce website, let's say it's like you've probably used one of these before, but often these e-commerce websites will have their own kind of internal search experience. You can power Marqo. So you can power that experience using Marqo. You can also power recommendations in Marqo as well. And a lot of what we're doing is working with customers to actually improve fundamental business metrics with basically better search. So, and a lot of our customers are seeing increases in revenue, increases in add to cart. We've seen customers get as high as sort of 17% increase in add to cart through implementing Marko, sort of swapping out their existing kind of keyword-based search experience for Marko.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I could see a huge play there with e-commerce and just better search, or maybe you get those emails after, like you bought this, but you might like, this product and that product. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. So who are you going into the, I guess, like the engineers or the CTO within these companies, organizations? They're the ones who are the champion and bringing it in-house.
Absolutely. I think one of the things about Marko that our customers love is the developer experience. So we often have these developers who within these organizations who can build Marko into their kind of search experience in just a few days. And I think this is also what differentiates Marko from a vector database as well, because it provides all of these components, all of this componentry around the vector database. So it generates the embeddings. You can just work with unstructured data like text and images, very easy to use API. It's like your machine learning model. So a lot of the time it is the developers who are the champions of Marko. But then we also have this component as well where we can actually, deploy a solutions architect with the customer and actually take a good look at their data and their use case and actually help them also from the product side to actually get that improvement in whatever that fundamental business metric is that they want to sort of pursue. So, and that can vary depending on the customer, but I think there's those two value propositions, one around developer experience being open source, and then one around how do we actually improve the business metrics for the business.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So what year did you found Marco?
So Marko was founded in April 2022, but I was sort of working on a few other ideas around, before that as well. I was working on a few other things and in the search space, sort of a few months before, a few projects, and but yeah, we got together and sort of incorporated the company in 2022. April, we actually didn't get the team together, the full-time team. Only got together in June of 2022. So it's actually
Okay.
been it's been relatively fast from there to here, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And what do you have a headquarters location? Or are you all virtual?
So we have a headquarters our headquarters, I guess, at the moment is still Melbourne, Australia, but it's moving to San Francisco. So at the moment we're hiring the team and we're actually looking at offices and things like that. So I'm moved over to San Francisco permanently from Saturday. So
Oh,
I'm going to be over there. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
very exciting. And we're, so we're moving over to being a US based company.
Well, great. Yeah. Well, welcome. And tell us, for the other founders, you see a lot of that where say we start in our home country, non-US, and then, or we want to tap the North American market. So for the other founders who are thinking about maybe that same transition, what led you to making that move? So now moving the headquarters plus you moving to San Francisco.
I think it's two things. So firstly, when you look at our open source community, we actually have a lot of users based over in the US. It's by far the biggest kind of geographical segment of our open source use base. So that was something that we really wanted to tap into more. And we also have we're also starting to get more and more customers, enterprise customers as well in the US. So we wanted to be, from a time zone perspective and geographical perspective, closer to those customers. So I think that was one thing. So customers. I think the other component is actually around talent. So there's, especially when you're doing dev infrastructure, there's a lot of amazing talent in San Francisco with experience, with a lot of experience in dev infrastructure products, like whether that's selling dev infrastructure, whether that's building dev infrastructure, whether that's marketing dev infrastructure. And in Melbourne, sometimes that talent can be hard to come by. So I think just the concentration of talent in SF is great.
Okay. Yeah. Really appreciate the insight. Yeah. That could help others who are kind of thinking of that. What's that trigger? So, and what's your current team size?
So we're around people at the moment, 20, something around that, like
Okay.
it might be 30, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. And anything you want to share around revenue ranges or AR ranges?
Yeah, unfortunately we're not sharing any of those figures today.
Okay, revenue generating or still?
Yeah, we're
Perfect.
absolutely, we're revenue generating.
Okay,
It's
sounds good.
substantial revenue. Yep.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And so tell us a little bit about your go-to-market motion and who you're trying to land, because you mentioned, hey, we're getting some good enterprise customers in the US. So who's, you mentioned, I think before, maybe government, military, different applications here. So tell us a little bit about how you're finding your prospects and what is that sweet spot for your ICP?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said before, it's that mid-enterprise e-commerce. So that's really the ideal target customer. We're not saying that people, for example, in the government can't use Marko, and it's open source and we encourage people to use it. And that's why we have the open source offering, because we want anyone to be able to use Marko. And so I think that's critical. But I think in terms of the US, yeah, it's focused on that sort of mid-enterprise commerce component for now,
Okay,
at least.
yeah, mid enterprise e-commerce. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And then switching to the fundraising front, how much capital have you raised to date?
So we've now done 18 million in total
Okay, 18 million total, is that USD?
USD.
Okay. And then it looked like you just announced or recently as a Series A for 12 and a half.
Exactly. Yep. So we'd
Okay.
previously made about 5.5 kind of
Mhm.
thing. Seed was about 1 million. Up the pre-seed was about 1 million, and then we did a seed round, which was another sort of 4.5 ish, and then we did our Series A. Yeah.
Okay. And then looking at this right pretty fast here, I don't know, year and a half in business now, already through a Series A. So for the other founders who are, thinking about, kind of in the kind of that current situation, what maybe for the Series A, what was a trigger or milestone that led you to that raise?
Yeah. So I think the way we thought about it was we went out and raised the pre-seed was actually pre-product. So it was like we had the team though. We had an amazing, team that we'd kind of got together to work on this. And so I think that the kind of my co-founder and I getting together and deciding to work on something was kind of the trigger for the pre-seed.
Hmm.
So it was sort of pre-product, but we had the team and we had we had a good idea of what we were going to be working on, right? And then the seed round was really about, we had traction, but we didn't necessarily have revenue. So, the open source started growing really fast and we started getting a lot of really amazing users picking up the open source and starting to use it. And that was really the trigger for the seed round. And then for the Series A, we started to see some really strong commercial interest. So customers actually, we saw strong indications that customers were getting good results from Marko. So that we were really making fundamental improvements in the business. So these add to cart rate improvements that were translating into real revenue improvements. So the product was working, and also that we saw appetite and customers were paying us substantial amounts of money for Marko. And I think that was the other component there, which was important to that Series A. So seeing that sort of 4 or 5 customers with really, who were willing to sign substantial contracts and pay for Marko.
Yeah, and that's great insight. Just you're thinking of, pre-seed and just how that worked through the Series A. And, interview open source founders, every now and then, but more of a minority. So can you tell us what's a little different with open source? I mean, this is right, pretty fast growth, but it sounds like it does take a lot of, you're right, pre-revenue, just getting that and use that traction in the form of a downloads open source users. So open source, is that a little different than if I was just out there and offering a B2B product?
Yeah, I think it really accelerates growth because I think it does two things. So open source helps you gain the trust of developers, because let's say you're selling AI search. If you were just selling that to a business, I could imagine why a developer would be very resistant to sort of, if it was closed source, sort of would be quite resistant to actually adopting that, because it's like AI search, like what is it really? What does it do? Is it really, anything different to what we're doing? And I think developers are very resistant to new technology sometimes because they don't actually know what it does. And it's sort of, you need to, I think it's very important to be able to like expose some of what you do to the developer to actually say, look, here's this new, piece of technology that we've built. And it's something that, you should take a look at. It's something that we think is, something new that no one else has built before. And I think that's why the open source is really important. So initially creating that developer trust, I think the open source was instrumental in doing that. I think the second thing is obviously the tightness of the iteration cycle. So you'll have a community and you'll be working with who will be using your product. And because it's kind of out there for anyone to use, you'll have these random, customers who come to you that you didn't even know existed. And they'll be like, oh, I actually, you took out this feature, or, and, when you upgrade the major version, or I want to see this feature, like so you see a lot of customers kind of coming to you that you don't actually have to do really any work to actually get.
Mhm.
So I think that's also great. So it sort of reduces that kind of time to market. And you also don't need to operate the software as well. So the customer will kind of operate the software, which reduces that operational overhead. So you can kind of get to market without needing to worry about like, you know, and the cloud is all about that. Cloud is all about running Marqo in a really stable, reliable, low latency way for the customer. But then the initial open source offering was just the customer runs it themselves, which reduces that operational burden, operational overhead.
Yeah, no, that's great. Appreciate that insight. And almost 2 years in business now, and a really pretty fast fundraising cycle from seed to Series A or pre-seed to Series A. So, any fundraising lessons or things that you think of looking back on all that fundraising experience that you'd like to share with other founders who may be in similar situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'm assuming you think so. Sorry, one moment. Yeah, so I think there are a few things. I think having a lot of conversations kind of before you're ready to raise is very important. Like have those conversations, form the connections. I actually, one of the mistakes I do see a lot of pre-seed founders make is like they wait until, they've got a perfect deck and they're ready to pitch and they're ready to say, oh, I want $10,000, I want $1 million or whatever they want from the investor. And they sort of wait for that moment so that they can go and pitch to this investor. But actually what's the way better way of doing it is to actually have these conversations and sort of build the connections and actually, go to these investors and say sometimes, look, I'm not looking to raise, but I'm really looking to connect and learn more about, your fund and what you're doing and what investments you've made in the past. And building that up over time, I think leads to a fundraising round because suddenly you're not just some founder who's turned up to pitch to some VC. It's like you've got that existing relationship and they've got the chance to learn a lot about what you do. And often in those cases, they'll come to you as well and they'll say, actually, I think what you're doing is really interesting. I know that you don't have the deck or anything, but, just send me some more information. I'd love to, put this through my investment committee.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So build that network first before you need it, and then maybe, yeah, rather than blasting out those cold emails to the VCs. So, Tom, so based, on your current stage of your business, do you have a favorite number or metric that you're focused on to guide the business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at the moment we're focused on two things. So I think it's open source adoption. So number of open source users, number of things like, and then those are proxy metrics. So things like number of downloads, number of community members. So we want to continue to grow the open source community and monitor kind of that health of the open source community, I think is very important. And then I think the other component that's important is our commercial offering. So we're on the commercial side, we're focused, I guess, as a business in growing revenue. I think that's really the top line kind of thing we look at on a cloud service. But I think the biggest thing that we're in still at the moment is like successful customers. Like we know that if we can get customer, if they can increase their revenue, if they're a mid-enterprise e-commerce company, let's say they do 800 million in revenue and they can use Marqo and increase their revenue by 10%. That is, we can find ways to monetize that and get the customer to pay more for Marqo, right? But I think from my perspective, really what we're most focused on is that customer success and those customer success stories. So successful customers, I think is another metric I think that we think about as well.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Tom, really appreciate your time today. As we wrap up, tell us what's coming up next for Marqo.
Yeah, so we've just obviously finished our Series A funding round, which is super exciting. We're going to be scaling the team. We're going to be putting a lot of this new funding into new features. And in particular, we're going to be launching to public availability our fine-tuning service. So you'll be able to fine-tune embeddings on the Marqo Cloud platform. This is really important for getting basically the best possible search experience, improving the quality of these models that generate the vectors. So that's going to be coming to Marqo. And yeah, I think other than that, yeah, it's just been super exciting. I think we've been seeing a lot of traction, a lot of happy customers, and yeah, looking forward to seeing what the next couple of years brings us.
Yeah, definitely a lot of capital to deploy now. So now time to scale and execute. So, Tom, really appreciate your time sharing your experiences today. If listeners would like to learn more about Marqo, where should we send them online?
Yeah, so I think so. Marqo has a website, so Marqo AI. You can head there, fill out the contact form. You can also, I guess, follow me on LinkedIn or follow the company on LinkedIn or send me a connection request on LinkedIn if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Well. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. We'll put
very
some
cool.
LinkedIn in the show notes, and it's just to clarify, it's Marqo.ai, correct, for your website?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. So listeners, if you'd like to check out what Tom's doing at Marqo, check out Marqo, Marqo.ai to learn more. And Tom, appreciate the time today and sharing your experiences.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thanks a lot for your time, Ben.